All right, hey, welcome to the CGM Podcast, and I'm so excited for our episode today because, man, I have one of my great friends in ministry right here with me. This is now Dr. Jonathan Teague.
Yeah.
All right, so Jonathan, why don't you just tell us, man, where are you serving right now, and what's God just been up to in your life?
Absolutely, man. It is a absolute, complete joy to be sitting here with you, Michael, and man, my wife and I, we love you and Katie and your amazing family and the Green Acres family. This is an awesome venue that and a space you've created for incredible conversations. And so I'm really, really honored to sit here with you. This reminds me of many. Wait.
We have to filter any memories that you have.
Never mind. Just walking back. This reminds me of sitting together, man, for many occasions in my living room or your office or
absolutely
somewhere down in the Commons at Prestonwood and just talking life and ministry. And I'm just so thrilled to hang out with you, man. So,
so you know what I was reminded of?
Yeah.
I was talking to Katie about, man, I'm so excited I get to do this with Jonathan. And, you know, it's we're in the midst of the Easter season, and it just reminded me, every Easter, we were always at your house. Yeah, every Easter.
Everyone.
So we have good memories of that.
We do.
And such a blessing.
We do. Riley was like this tall.
Yeah.
Now she's like,
listen,
that tall.
It's hard to keep up with it, just to be honest.
I know.
Yeah.
I know, man.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm our senior associate pastor at Prestonwood Baptist Church in the Plano area, a church that you're very familiar with.
Absolutely.
That loves you and your family.
Yeah.
And so I work closely with our pastor, Dr. Graham, and on our preaching team and serve our pastoral care ministry. And I lead our internship program and our Prestonwood Network, which, as you know, is a huge connection point of planters and revitalizers and pastors all over North America.
Yeah.
So we're having fun. We're staying busy. Having
fun. You know, it's incredible because, you know, Pastor Graham has had such an impact on my life personally, such a huge impact on your life.
Absolutely.
And, you know what I love about Pastor Graham is, I mean, as busy as he is, man, he still takes phone calls.
He does.
And he mentors. The thing that I love about the Prestonwood Network is that Pastor Graham really does take raising up the next generation of pastors very seriously.
Yeah,
and, you know, I'm just so grateful for that. But now I love the fact that you have a seat in helping lead that because you've had that similar impact in my life because you're a mentor. I mean, that's just in your DNA, man. You love pouring into people, and that's just how God has built you. There has never been a moment where you're too busy for people, man. So that's just commendable.
I appreciate that, man.
But there's an area of expertise that I love to pick your brain about.
Yeah.
Because we've been talking about just generational ministry.
Yeah, sure.
And, you know, something that the church continues to face. This is nothing new to the church.
That's right.
But it seems like with growing statistics that it seems on the outskirts that it seems more and more difficult to make sure we're intentional with every generation.
Yeah, that's right.
So what are you seeing? I mean, within those regards, I mean, are generations, is there a specific generation that's leaving the church that's difficult? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've raised a great issue, and I know this is something that in just, man, knowing your ministry for many years before you guys came here, and I want to say this just for the audience that's listening and for your people that I know are engaged, Michael, with this podcast. But man, Great Acres family, you have an amazing pastor. You have an amazing heritage and legacy of pastors. But you have an amazing pastor, and his wife and family are the real deal. And that's something that, I mean, you know, I got to come on here and brag on you. Man. You know I got to do that.
Just don't tell everybody that I paid you $20 to say that. All right?
No way, man. No way. But I mean, Green Acres family, you have a phenomenal pastor, and we love the Gossets. And you guys, I think the very, very best days for your ministry here in East Texas and beyond from this place and from your ministry and your preaching, Michael. I'm so happy to see how the Lord's brought you guys here. And this is a great church, man. It's a great ministry.
It is an incredible church.
And like a lot of churches in our convention of churches and really in broader swaths of evangelicalism, right?
Right.
You've asked the right question. I mean, we are seeing what others, and I would agree with this, are calling generational gaps that are forming in the church. And we have to be careful with this because statistics and research take us so far, conversations get us a little further. Observation, I think when you take comprehensively and you look at all of that, I think it's hard for us to ignore over the last 10, maybe even 20 years, a drift that's taken place in those gaps where they've become more pronounced. In other words, we might have in my church, which is a great church with a long-standing pastor and faithful, incredible, dynamic preaching and ministry, tons of ministries in and around the cities, very similar to Green Acres. And yet at the same time, all of us to one degree or another, we're navigating through these growing divides between, if you could say pretty fairly, there are 5 generations in your church today, right? So there's the silent generation, maybe 6, the silent generation, which we have very, very few of them left. But these are folks born kind of prior to World War II. They fought World War II. They are that greatest generation. Some people confuse baby boomers. That's actually their parents.
Yeah.
So that'd be my grandparents, right? But your grandparents would be that generation. Now they're vibrant church attenders. They're givers. They're servants. They're prayer warriors. I mean, they were coming up into their church affiliation during the height of Billy Graham and that kind of revival preaching. And then you have baby boomers that were born, late 40s, early 50s, up until the early 60s. And so that'd probably be your parents. My parents are baby boomers born in 52 and 53. Still pretty faithful church goers. Right. Very, very involved in the church growth movements. A lot of baby boomer pastors were the ones that were really at the apex of the church growth movement when churches were building out quickly throughout the United States, reaching a lot of people. Baby boomers, however, are arguably the first generation where divorce became really pronounced. And so that's where we start to get the issue, the divorce trends, latchkey kids, blended families, all of that kind of, it's not started by baby boomers, but it's pretty well exacerbated. Right. Indebtedness, consumer debt, those kinds of things are aspects, right? Right. Then you have Gen Xers. Gen Xers are kind of the middle child generation, right? And so there's not many of them. There's around 40 million at their height. And so because they're almost half of the baby boomer generation, these are the people that are highly pragmatic and they're tricky to work with in the workplace. They'd be in their late 40s and 50s now. They are in charge kind of people, and their patience for younger generations is really, really thin. Yeah. And so that's important to know. And then we come to the millennials, right? Which I know we want to talk a lot about today. So millennials, I put it this way in what I've written about and what others say that I kind of appeal to, Michael. Millennials are people born basically when Ronald Reagan or Bill Clinton were president. Yeah. So think early 80s up to the late 90s. Yeah. Some people say 80 to 2000. Some people say 81 to 96. It's in there. It's around roughly 80 million people, which for today, it's the largest generation on the planet. Right. They are the least churched, most spiritually interested generation on the planet. They're a very global tribe of people. And they are becoming more and more diverse. Then you have Generation Z, which is our kids. Right? Yeah. So I have a 16-year-old. I have a lot of kids. I have a 16-year-old.
How many kids are you up to now?
All right, so I got 5 kids. I have a 16-year-old. I have a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old girl, who you know all of them. Oh, yeah. And then baby Joe, our little boy Joseph, who's now going to be 8 next month. So just get your head around that. And then the Lord gave us one extra princess last summer. Her name is Olivia. So I got them. She would be a Generation Alpha, right? So she would be our very, very, very youngest, which we know almost nothing about them because there's no demography out there to tell us. Absolutely. So our Gen Z kids are coming to college now. Their oldest are coming to college. And millennials, the average millennial in your church would be about 32 years old. And so what we know about millennials is they're getting married later. They're having their babies later. So for a long time, churches could count on students leaving student ministry and saying, all right, well, we'll get them after college. So when they come back to town and they get a job and they get married and they have kids, we've got a ministry paradigm set up to intersect where they are. Well, millennials are taking longer to go to college, get that job, meet that spouse, and have those kids. And so that natural backbone of ministry that we lean into, it's changed a little bit. Their expectations have changed, and what we can do changes a little bit. Generation Z is going to be the biggest generation on the planet. There's no question. So if you're out there and you lead in next-gen ministry or preteen ministry, you are the real tip of the spear. You really are the front burner ministry that we ought to be thinking about as our churches. That's where our kids are. They are global. They are a borderless generation. They are aware of the world. Social media is indigenous into their life, like where you and I adopted mobile phones, social media, like we grew into that as millennials. These kids are born into it. So go to a restaurant sometime this week and watch how many parents are parenting with a device in a kid's hand. Oh yeah, you'll see them iPadding it. You'll see it. That's that 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. So they're going to know a different world than that. So highly technologically, digitally driven. That's going to change so much of how we potentially interface with them in church. So that's kind of a cross section of what we're dealing with.
So you said something. You said that but I do find that interesting about the digital natives. Yeah. It's so interesting to me because you and I are just not familiar with that. Cell phone. No. I didn't get a cell phone until I was 16.
Yeah, I went to college. Which my kids don't believe me. That's true. Yeah, and it was a flip phone.
Like, wait, what do you mean?
It was a flip phone with weekend minutes that roamed. You know what I'm talking about? You know what roaming is?
Yeah, oh, for sure.
I got yelled at if I used my phone during the week because I was burning those minutes up.
Yeah, yelled at with a godly tone.
In love.
Yeah, it was all in the
stewardship. Yeah. Don't burn those minutes, man.
No, absolutely.
My kids have no concept for that. Neither do yours.
And now, that age is just decreasing dramatically of when you get a cell phone. But you said something else. You said that the millennial generation is the least churched generation. So, this is kind of off a little bit of our script, just for everyone to know, we try to have a roadmap.
There's a game plan. Yeah, it's a strong game plan.
But we're about to just throw it away.
That's fine.
All right, we're about to just have a conversation.
It's called
because
it's all right.
I want us to really dig into that because if we are raising the tip of the spear, as you just said, and it is the least churched generation, what is that going to tell us about the next generation? I mean, it can't just dramatically get better apart from parents engaging in the local church and engaging and raising their children up in the likeness of Christ. So what are the challenges of us reaching the millennial generation? Sure. But what also, John, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
What are the obstacles and challenges that are just preventing millennials from engaging in the church?
Yeah, so one guy that talks a lot about this is actually a Catholic. He'd probably be a progressive Catholic. He's a guy named Ross Douthout who writes a lot for the New York Times. He's got a couple of great books, one called Bad Religion, which is really interesting. He dives pretty deep into these kinds of questions.
Like millennial specifically?
Millennial engagement, how young adults in America are really interfacing with their faith.
I got you.
A lady named Jean Twenge about 20 years ago, she kind of set out on a path to really study young adults. A guy we know, Dr. John Potter at SMU, Southern Methodist, has leaned into this space a lot. I've had the privilege to teach with John a little bit and learn a lot from him as well.
He's a great resource.
He's phenomenal. So there's people that have been writing about this for a long time. So it's not, I'm saying that to say, it's not like this snuck up on us.
Right.
And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, wait, where are 70 million people in our churches? Like, where did they go?
Right.
But it is such a knee jerk from those boomers and to an extent those Gen Xers who, man, they built our churches. It's like baby boomers built this building that we're sitting in.
That's right.
100%.
Yeah.
So they raised the money, they paid the price, they did the stewardship. They
sacrificed.
They did. That was who they were. It's who they are. It's not that necessarily millennials don't want to do that. It's that they don't trust who will steward it.
What do they not trust?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot. There's much that you could debate about here, but here's what I think. I think that let's create a stratification, right? Let's put some classification to it. I would say that, like, say if you're a young adult, like 40 and under ish, somewhere in there, right? You're a 22 to 40-year-old today. You're mostly millennial. Maybe you're an older millennial, younger millennial, but you're somewhere in that stretch. If you grew up in church, the numbers tell us in Southern Baptist life, which is the denomination of churches that your church and mine are, we're Southern Baptist. That's who we are in our polity and our distinctives.
Right.
So the belief around the Bible, mode of baptism, being a part of a local church, missions, those are a big deal to us.
Absolutely.
Well, we raised a whole generation of kids. At one point, there were 20 million Southern Baptists in America. That's a lot of kids, a lot of teenagers, a lot of student ministry.
Right.
Those kids, statistics tell us now, maybe as many as 3/4 are leaving our churches before they even finish high school. Now, whether they're
before high school. Now, there's big debate about how you would even possibly know that, because maybe because youth pastors aren't the most organized people, and maybe I'm a former youth pastor. I can say that. You're a former preaching pastor. I know the drill.
Yeah, we know the drill. Right?
Yeah, there were some here.
Yeah, there were a few.
There were a couple kids here.
I'll check on that. Yeah,
anywhere from 2 to 500 people.
To 500. Yeah,
it's fine.
But because, in all honesty, because youth ministry was at times so open-ended and so organic, students began to kind of lose their place and their voice and all that. And so there's drifting there. The bottom line is this: Southern Baptist kids, by and large, aren't coming back to our churches once they become adults. That's one obstacle.
70 to 75% are leaving.
In that neighborhood. Somewhere in that neighborhood.
I would love to know, what are the reasons why some are coming back or not coming back? I don't even know if that research is out there.
So it's evolving, but what we see, and pastors see this. I mean, a lot of this is observable, right? Like, so as a pastor, you see these kinds of things. But when we see this generational drift, it tends to be predicated around a couple of different things. I grew up in church and I had a terrible experience. So I was preaching yesterday out of Romans 13 about just being a neighbor, neighborly love, right? Paul talks about love your neighbor, love does no harm. But I made the point because, I mean, young adults might be watching, and there's some in the room.
Right.
Hey, some of y'all, your church experience was not positive. In fact, I was on the phone with a young lady this morning that we were talking through for our internship program, Michael, and she grew up in a certain kind of local church that was kind of harmful for her. Her experience was not strong.
Wow.
And she said, I decided to give Prestonwood a shot. She was a summer intern for us last summer because I wanted to see if every big church was like my church.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so now is that a completely fair appraisal, right? Because one church involvement is not all churches.
Sure.
Right? But there's enough through social media, through other influences, through the news noise that a lot of millennials expose themselves to. There's a greater awareness and a more emotional connection to the breakdown of things spiritually beyond just my experience.
Right.
So, for instance,
the narrative is there.
right. So when I grab the narrative, it becomes my narrative.
Correct.
Right. So when Notre Dame was burning a few years ago,
right.
millennials are posting online pictures of when they were there. Like the disconnect is so palpable. Like that has nothing to do with this iconic building burning, but because you were there once, it becomes my experience.
Yeah.
So I think one major obstacle we have is that young adults, they superimpose those experiences of others onto themselves. And that creates a pathway of mistrust.
Is that a millennial thing?
Maybe not, but I think that's ubiquitous in all generations, but millennials are really good at it.
Yeah.
And it becomes an easy stick to hit churches and pastors with.
Yeah.
Fair or unfair. I mean, in other words, have there been abuses in the church? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Have there been a misuse of authority? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Has that been every situation everywhere? No.
Yeah.
No. But for a lot of young adults, that's the route they take. They don't trust church.
Listen, we are in a. It seems like a wide narrative, almost a movement. I hate to call it a movement because that's a powerful word.
That's not unfair.
But it seems that millennial Gen Zers even they're growing up in an anti-institutional era.
Yeah, that's a great way
and
to put it.
Anti-clerical.
Yeah.
I mean all of it.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And I think pastors and leaders and moms and dads, I know we'll talk about this in a minute, but pastors and leaders and influencers, coaches, teachers, people that speak into the lives of young adults and young people, they need to be aware of these things. There's a baked-in cynicism that comes into the mentality of a lot of people in this age group. So we see it in disciple-making relationships.
Oh, yeah.
We see a delay in even showing up for conversations. Like, how many times have you scheduled with a young adult? You did ministry for millennials.
Yeah.
How many times would you schedule with a young adult and they would bail? How many times would you match them up with an older adult in our church? We used to talk about this, right?
Oh, nonstop.
And they wouldn't connect.
Right.
And so the stereotype of older generations, here's that gap, right? The stereotype is millennials are lazy. They don't care. They can't be counted on. Millennials are saying, no, I do care. I am motivated. I just don't trust you. I don't trust what you have to give me. And the older generations are saying, I don't trust that you'll steward what we've created well. So when we funnel it down into the spiritual space, into the church space.
That's actually a great observation.
I think that's the primary obstacle.
Do you see that? So we're talking about at large.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't just a church; it's societal.
It is cultural.
right?
Yeah,
I mean, it is cultural.
It is.
But are you observing that what you just described, that gap? Are you seeing that being played out in unhealthy ways in the church?
Well, it certainly can, yes. Like, for instance, one way you see it played out in an unhealthy way is when the narrative from either our pulpits or the culture of our leadership or just the general narrative from a local body is that, I don't know, this is a pretty reductive way of saying it, but millennials are dumb and not helpful, right? Like and for a long time, that was what you would hear. Like, man, young adults are a drain, they're a burden. Let's put them somewhere where they're not going to bother us.
Yeah,
and
just put them in a student building somewhere.
Just throw some money at it,
Yeah.
and maybe we get lucky, right? Because there's an aversion to some of that attitude, as opposed to saying, no, we're going to make the sacrifice to engage. And the way we're going to close that generation gap is to practice Titus 2, which says, I mean, this is a biblical thing. It's not like the good news is if you struggle with this, if you're maybe a mom or dad that has a millennial kid, I talk to a lot of moms and dads and grandparents that have millennial kids and grandkids that are far from God and far from church right now. Yeah. And their hearts are broken about it, man.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's just a deep despair because it's like, I raised them this way. I brought them to Jesus. Like I did all the stuff you told me to do and they're out. Like, what do I do? Paul tells Titus when he's planting a church in Crete, which was a rough and tumble town.
Yeah.
So like if Las Vegas and I don't know, Las Vegas had a city.
Mobile, Alabama.
Mobile, Alabama, right? Yeah. I don't know. Like Miami, if Las Vegas and Miami and
I like Mobile better.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, anytime that we can just kind of crush Alabama. I'm kidding.
Because Georgia's better.
Right.
That's clear. That's documented.
Well, this year's national championship for the first time beat Alabama, so it's a big deal.
Somewhere Herschel Walker's really happy right now.
I don't know how I got there.
That's
in
okay.
my heart. I think that God is still rooting out some sin in my heart about
some bitterness.
Losing to Alabama all of these years, as if I'm a part of the team.
Because does it feel real? Does it feel real? Like, is it still like? Are you concerned you've been pranked?
Yes.
It's still real.
Like I'm like, I don't trust it.
Yeah, I know.
Is the media true on this?
I don't know.
Yeah,
don't know.
Oh man.
But man, Paul drops. Here, back full circle somehow.
Here we
got
go.
there. Paul drops Titus off in that town and says, "Build a church." And he says in Titus 1, the way you build a church is you get biblical elders, leaders, pastors to co-labor with you. Then chapter 2, he says, find the older men and get them around the younger men. Amen. And the older women and the younger women. So there is a biblical formula here. The obstacle for us, though, even as younger leaders, the obstacle for us is to say, man, the gap feels so large and it's so many people and there's such a diversity of conflict in what the scripture tells us to preach and teach and what the culture in this generation of young people really at least signals they believe in. And so it feels like a natural conflict. That's where a lot of the obstacle is. It's like, man, how do I even engage you with just the Bible when I'm pretty sure you're going to disagree with it on its face?
Right.
And a lot of leaders get discouraged as a result.
You know, of what you just described in Titus, that's why, you know, here at Greenacres, we have taken, you know, strides to make sure that our generations are together in worship. Yeah. You know, it's because there's this, we can feel it. You can sense this gap, this growing division, this growing gap, and no one wants it.
No.
But man, it's difficult when everybody's together. Yeah. It's like a family reunion. Mm-hmm. Man, you want your family to be together. Yeah. But you know that your crazy Uncle Fred is going to show up, you know, but the point is that if we're not rubbing shoulders together in worship, you're most likely not going to create connections so that those Titus 2 relationships are even possible. Right. And so the thing that we have said over and over again is that, man, we need the wisdom of the older generations. Yep. And we have to have the energy of the younger generations. Yep. And those two things have to collide for the church to be healthy.
Well, it's a call to engagement from both sides, right? So gaps are formed from both ends. Right. So if you think of it this way, when a gap emerges, it's because two sides are pulling away. I'm sure there's an important word in high school I should have learned for this. Centrifugal force? Or sure.
You know,
force.
Faith Hill actually wrote a song about that.
She sure did. My wife would know it.
My wife would.
She would know for sure. But that's what gaps do, man. They form and they'll naturally pull apart. Yeah. If untended. And so as we think about being under shepherds and shepherds of God's people, as you think about being a parent, as you think about being a grandparent, an influencer, a leader, those gaps will form if you don't tend to them. And so what we always say, I said this yesterday, man, my pastor talks about this a lot. Some of what I think is going to have to create that gap closure, Michael, is one, we're going to have to come back to the older generations and one more time say, we know you've lived your life and you've loved Jesus and you've helped build this church and you've been faithful. And this is not all your fault, but in the economy of the kingdom of God, we're asking you one more time to make incredible sacrifices for the sake of drawing this generation close. And
man, that's a great word.
Young adults, we're asking you, as these faithful people rise up and say, man, we will press in and we will pray and we will be present. Asking you.
Because of those older generations, they've already proven they'll do it.
They've proven they'll do it.
They will do it.
But the reality is, man, and I don't like saying this. I liked even less having to write about it and having to kind of like stand up in academic and ministry settings and training other staffs or even in my own team and talk about this. But it's true. is that, man, when we get down to the brass tacks of it, people that have been faithful for a long time kind of look at you and go, but I've done all that God's asked me to do.
Yeah.
Like, when's my Social Security for the kingdom kick in, man?
Right.
And simultaneously, young adults are saying, and I think this is paramount to this discussion. I think younger people, and this would include Gen Z, Michael, are looking at older generations in the church for sure.
Right.
And saying, so prove to me that 50 years of following Jesus matters.
Oh,
Like show me.
Wow, that's a statement.
In your marriage, right? In your finances,
that's a
in
statement.
your business life. Like, because of all these years, because if the argument is follow Jesus, right? Mark 9.
Yeah.
I mean, Luke's every gospel, like pick up your cross, follow me. Jesus says it, right?
It's pretty much everywhere in
Pretty much
Scripture.
everywhere. This was Jesus' theme of his ministry. Come and die and follow me.
That's right.
If you're in, this is what it looks like.
Right.
And a lot of young adults, here's what I believe, man. And I believe this. This is not just something I think or say. I believe this. I believe that a disproportionately large number of young adults, both in the culture and in the church, it's not that they have a problem with Jesus because Jesus healed. I mean, look at the popular things like The Chosen and look at some of even the more fringy preaching out there.
Right.
It's not that they have a problem with healing Jesus or loving Jesus or loaves and fishes Jesus or walking on water Jesus or maybe even dying on the cross Jesus.
That's
not the issue.
Jesus.
Right. That's not the issue, right? The issue is not that. It's not that they're out on Jesus. It's that they're out on the demands of his kingdom. And so since the demands of his kingdom have been for some a burden and a frustration, and we've had casual Christianity emerge out of that in the American church, young adults look at that and go, man, that's not authentic. That doesn't last. So you're calling me to a faith that hasn't even worked for you. So to close that generational gap, we've got to say to these faithful people, it has worked because the gospel always works. It never fails.
That's right.
It has worked, and I'm going to press in, and I'm gonna avail myself to trust and try and show up. And so it's a call of sacrifice to both in the body. In the culture, I think it's a much more deeper pronounced issue where, man, we're gonna have to be willing to tackle with truth. We're gonna have to be able to engage false ideology. There is a new Gnosticism that's run rampant in the hearts and minds of young adults. Moralism, all these kinds of things that are attacking our kids on the college level. Man, if you think some of those things, oh gosh, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it.
I just choked on my coffee. I'm so sorry.
Are you all right?
I'm fine. My eyes are watering. I'm so sorry.
Are we good?
The producers of this podcast are judging me so hard. I'm sorry.
Are we good?
But I'm a real person, and I just choked on my coffee.
This is authenticity.
This
people.
is authenticity
this is
at
real.
its best.
This is real ministry.
Man, excuse me.
You want to walk it back? Are we still rolling?
No, we're just gonna
roll. Let's go.
Press in.
Press into it.
Golly.
So those are the obstacles. That's real. That's real. So, but there's hope. I don't think this is hopeless.
I'm gonna have to get it back together.
You got it. We're
I just
in there.
choked.
Are you okay?
I'm fine.
You know more CPR than I do. I'm gonna be honest with you.
That's actually true.
Your background we would be leaning into you to help you, and that's
as
the
I'm
problem.
joking. I'll give you directions. So Jonathan, I do want to shift just a tad bit, man. So we're talking about what this looks like in the church. What are we to do as parents?
Yeah.
Especially, millennials are out of the house.
Yeah.
But millennials are now raising Gen Z.
Some are out of the house. Some have found their way back in.
What I meant to say, is millennials should be out of the house. Okay?
Adulthood is real.
They should be adulting at this point. And listen, there have been circumstances, and listen, if you're a millennial and you have found yourself back in your parents' house for a season,
save that money, man.
Hey, press in.
Yeah.
Let the Lord use it.
Yeah.
And then get back to adulting and living God's kingdom. But the point here is, as parents, we're raising Gen Zers.
Yes.
And I have an alpha.
You do. We both do.
Yeah.
We have little baby alphas. Yeah.
Baby alpha.
There you go.
So what are we to do as parents to help raise up this next generation with all of the obstacles that are facing them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great question. And one of the things we have to recognize is that in actuality, the question you just asked is, how do we help millennials be good parents?
Yeah.
Because that's who's raising these kids now. And so if everything we just said about young adults is true to one degree or another, now insert parenting into that worldview.
Oh, yeah.
And now realize how crippling the anxiety can be for a lot of young parents in that, man, statistically we know the average millennial woman gets married about 29 and a half years old. The average millennial guy about 28. The average American millennial woman is having her first baby 30 to 31. That is a 10-year move from her grandparents. So her grandmother would have had her first baby 10 years before that.
Wow.
So think about your life from 20 to 30 and think about all the things you learned and experienced. Now, we have similar stories. You and Katie got married at a young age. Michelle and I got married at a young age. Right. We were babies, raising babies. We grew up together. We figured it out. We built our friendship through that first decade of life, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but when you bring all that in, right? So you bring in just the realities of, I only need to really worry about me. And I did that for a decade of adulthood to one degree or another. Now it's us, and now it's this little human that the Lord has given to me to love and invest. I think at that point, that's when, if your church hasn't been proactive to engage those young adults before they get to that point, you're behind. So if you're not scaling now, let's just offer a ministry context for a second, because the school systems are doing it, man. We can't build enough schools in North Texas, where I live, to accommodate the number of people and young families coming. Wow. So culture understands the scale that's involved here and the number of kids we're going to be talking about. But I think if your church isn't already thinking about strategic and dynamic disciple making in and through the home with mom and dad as the primary front burner influencers, then you're 5 years behind.
Yep.
Because what we know in raising kids is that, man, by 6 or 7, your child in your home has pretty well identified how things roll, who you are and what the standards are. So you got that window there. From there, you're shaping, and then from there, you're coaching. So my 16-year-old, it's not much discipline anymore. It's more coaching and helping her to see, like, how do I make these decisions now? I've learned these things. How do I take these steps? So if you're not comprehensively thinking, I need to be doing side-by-side ministry with young people in my church, discipling them, teaching them the scripture and how to apply it, and simultaneously building out to love kids through our space, through our strategies, our ministry philosophies, you're behind. You're way behind. And what will happen is young adults who interview our churches long before they ever walk in the door.
Absolutely.
They check us out online. They look at our social media. They go watch your sermons before they ever walk on campus.
Right.
They'll make all those determinations before you ever get to meet them, and you lose the chance to be heard. So there's a dynamic component of this that not all of our churches are great at thinking about this. We're not always the most forward-thinking people.
Right.
And we need to do that. And so I think, to be more specific, I think it's not only that, like on a larger issue, but then I think we've got to be putting resources in the hands of moms and dads that show them how to do this. It's got to be a part of preaching. It's got to be a part of our ministry calendars. It's got to be a part of how we engage families, specifically weekly. Some ministries I'm seeing, man, are even doing it daily through, coming out of the gate, man, the first text message on your phone for the day is a devotional thought that you can do for your kids. Resources that a mom and dad can chew up over 3 or 4 weeks. Most young parents that I talk to, man, they're just doing good to read the Bible occasionally. And so when you start saying you need to be the disciple maker in your home, they look at you and they're like,
their head's spinning.
That's why I'm coming here, man.
That's right.
And that hasn't changed, by the way, because their parents did that too.
Yeah.
That was student ministry. Modern student ministry grew out of parents dropping kids off and going, I don't know, can you handle this?
You're outsourcing discipleship.
1,000%.
And
so we've
seen that.
Yeah.
All right. So in closing, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
All right.
Because just organically, I know that you have things that you do because I've watched you and Michelle parent. And man, I'm telling you, I don't know of more godly parents than you and Michelle. And
it's
so
my wife, man.
We know that. I just wanted to throw you a bone here. Michelle's great.
That.
You're fine.
She's amazing. Okay. I'm just glad to be there. Just really.
I'm just glad to watch Michelle work.
Glad to be around. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she is. She's a treasure, man.
So give me 3 things that you say, hey, and once again, there's not like a combination to unlock our kids.
It's not.
Because the Spirit's got to work in their heart. Okay. Yeah. So we know that.
Yeah.
But what are 3 tools that we can put in front of us to say, hey, make sure you're doing these 3 things with your kid, and it's going to have a big impact?
So for us, this has evolved over the years because your kids evolve, and you evolve as parents. What does not change is the scripture. So parenthetically, I would just say, if we're trying to take a big right hook at this problem of closing these gaps, Maddie, one of the things that guys like you and me and others that have the privilege to preach weekly or periodically or be under great preaching. Again, my church, my pastor's always been faithful about this. But just a side note, man, your pastors, churches, leaders, you've got to be preaching the Bible. word for word, page for page, cover to cover.
That's right.
I don't think young adults are scared of the Bible. We're scared to tell them about it.
Yeah.
And so it's remained mysterious to them because we withhold it from them.
Yeah.
I think the smartest, most effective churches are the ones where the pastor gets up week in and week out and preaches through the scripture authoritatively and then says, all right, if you have questions, let's talk.
Yeah.
And let me help you navigate through that,
Right.
because people always do. So to scale down from that, since that's my value as a pastor, then it's pretty hypocritical if I don't try to pull that off in my house.
Yeah.
So a couple things we're doing right now. You said 3 things. I'll try to get there. I'm not going to alliterate it, but I'll try to get there with 3.
They need to start all with P.
Great.
I'm kidding.
Wonderful. Peppa Pig.
Peppa Pig is a great discipler.
Fantastic.
Nope. That is a joke.
Just a lot of sing too. Just
Yeah.
do a lot of that. No, I was. Here's one thing we do, man. Sunday nights now, and I really do want to credit my wife with this. This was something the Lord put on her heart. Sunday nights, we have multiple ages and stages of life, and we were running into train wrecks on how to do family table discipleship. It would last 2 minutes, and then something.
Someone is always crying.
Some kind of distraction
during family worship
Someone wants
time.
a snack.
Someone is hungry. Someone is thirsty.
Yes, I mean I love Don Whitney, and I'm grateful for his. But man, it's hard.
Listen,
it's hard. So we do Sunday nights, man. We call it your moment, and so for about 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes, we'll sit down with each of our kids, and we ask them questions. So I guess time would be one, but intentional time.
Yeah.
Right. Intentional
That's good.
time. Not time where my device is out and we're in the room. That's not time. That's not quality time. Engaged time means, all right, hey, Caitlin, tell us about your week this week. Where do you have to be? What are the things that you're doing? So let's get calendar. Let's control the calendar. Let's not let it control us. How can mom and I pray for you? What are some things that mom and I can specifically lift up for you? What are things you're excited about this week that we can be excited with you? Because man, when your kid has a win, you need to be right there celebrating. And then we pray for them. And then we bring it's like an assembly line, man. Like we do that one and we bring in the next one, but reverse because we send the youngest to bed first, right? So we start with Joseph, then Anna, then Elizabeth.
Put that joker in bed.
Get him to bed, man. Get that bedtime
Baby
working.
Joe, you got to get in there.
We put the baby down, or sometimes the baby's there with us, but we do that intentional time. We try to find a way to take the text. There's a second T. Now I'm obligated to do a third one.
Word.
We try to We try to find time to take the text.
You're such a good Southern Baptist
Oh my
preacher.
gosh, man. My outline from yesterday is on my brain, so I can't break loose of it. But we try to take the text and find ways throughout the week, a verse, a scripture, a thought, a worship song that conveys something, a truth, right? And we deposit that in them. And then we talk about it. And we did it. There's the third T.
Talk.
We talk about it. So I'd say something like that, man. So find a time that you guard, that you protect, that you don't compromise on.
Yeah.
And make it intentional. And base it around some kind of truth that you want them to know, which means you got to know it. So it means you need to be showing up on the weekends, listening to your pastor preach. You need to get into a group, a community where people are challenging you, where you can use your gifts, be held accountable. And then you talk about it. And you be prepared for hard conversations, and you be prepared to lean into those, and don't freak out. We talk to a lot of young parents, and we've been there too, man, where the freak out factor is through the roof. Yeah. A lot of millennial parents, a lot of millennials in general, Michael, live with massive crippling anxiety.
Yes.
Massive crippling concern that they don't want to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things they don't do because they don't want to mess it up. They came out of brokenness in their home.
Right.
They came out of brokenness. So that with jobs, with bosses, with pastors, it doesn't matter. They're leaning towards, I want to have control and autonomy because I don't want to be hurt.
Yes.
Faith says, man, I'm going to trust what's around me, that it's not there. Romans 13:10, man. Love never hurts.
Yes.
Love's not there to let you down. Gospel love doesn't fail. 1
That's
Corinthians 13, love never fails. So I think, man, if you're a parent, if you'll lean in with the intentional time, if you'll deposit a truth, and then you'll talk about it. If you'll make yourself
I love that so
available,
much. Time,
I think God will use it.
Truth
and talk about it.
Man, I love that so much. I think that is just that's an easy reminder.
Yeah.
And just those little plugs of intentionality go so long. Jonathan, I think that I could sit here and talk to you probably for 6 hours.
Same. I love visiting
and
with
never
you,
get bored because there's always so much that I can just grab out of you. I love picking your brain, and I'm so grateful that you would come all the way over.
Absolutely.
From the big city of Dallas.
Hey, man. It's popping out here in Tyler, man.
Hey, listen, Tyler's getting it done. Yeah,
it's going down.
Yeah, we're excited what God's doing out here. But, man, thank you for being here with us. And Dr. Teague, so if they want to have like some more information about Millennials, or maybe a good article, maybe a place to find it, where's one of your go-to spots for?
Man,
I put you on the spot so much today.
No, not at all, man. I tell you what, I love, a guy I love who has been in my life for a long time, man.
Michael Scott.
Yes, of course. That's actually a fascinating millennial insight. We should come back and talk just about how millennials on The Office and cohabitation. And holy cow! And it's all there. It actually is all there. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
But man, I'll tell you a guy that's been a constant influencer to me that I love. Two guys. One, a younger leader that's a guy that is just a powerhouse voice right now. Shane Pruitt.
Yeah,
I love Shane. So his book,
love Shane.
9 Common Lies Christians Believe, I think is the title.
Yes.
Don't hold me against that, Shane, if I forgot it. But Shane Pruitt's a phenomenal disciple maker, communicator, and I've had the privilege to do a few things with Shane and just watch him. He's great.
He's great.
You should go look up Shane Pruitt, listen to his preaching. Yeah. And then another guy that's kind of on that boomer end, but just in this for the sake of closing generational gaps, man. Truth can live on both sides. We come together around the truth. Richard Ross. Dr. Richard Ross is
legend,
man. I remember sitting in his class in seminary, getting ready to go do student ministry, which was the first decade of our ministry. And those were millennials that we were loving.
Oh, man.
Right? So they're grown up now. Richard Ross, man, to this day, if you're a parent, his 30 days notebook, and I promise you'll have to dig it up inside the bowels of Amazon.
Yeah.
But man, he's got some disciple making stuff that is just phenomenal for parents and kids, for students. And Dr. Ross is just a guy that I deeply respect. And just
those are two godly men that I completely trust.
Excellent, man.
Man, thank you for those nuggets. Man, thank you for being here. I love you. Love this guy. Love his family. And you are a family man and a great pastor. And I'm just so honored to just to get to be friends with you. So
man, it's all Jesus,
thank you for your love. And
it's all Jesus.
And man, all you do. But hey, listen, as we close out, don't forget to subscribe. I don't really know what you do to subscribe. I've heard you like hit a bell.
Surely the
like
internet knows.
The internet will know, and we will
it'll prompt you, I'm sure. Yeah.
It'll prompt you. Like everything is just self-service now.
It's all there.
So just click on some things like it, share it, hit the bell. And anything else that the Lord leads you to do.
It was incredible.
But listen, we love you, and we hope you have a blessed week. I hope this has been a great tool for you. Yeah. And go Father. No,
you got it. We're fine.
No,
it's fine.
Go follow Jonathan Teague. You can find him on Twitter,
Jonathan_Teague. So, and Instagram. I should know my handle. It's
Jonathan
out there.
Teague.
It's out there. It's out there.
We're gonna put Jonathan Teague's handle right here.
It's out there. Yeah, we got it.
No, we're gonna do it.
We're gonna do it
right here. All right. Hey, take care. Until next time.
Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode and joining in on our conversation. If you liked what you heard or you want to know more about Green Acres, go check out our website at gabc.org or follow us on Instagram at gabc_Tyler. Have a great day.